Digital heroin. This is part of the headline published in the New York Post warning the public that electronic devices, particularly video games, are destroying the youth of America. While this article is now 2 years old, the recent uptick in video game hype has put the spotlight back on the gaming industry and how they're creating a new mental health crisis. And I'm not even kidding. The World Health Organization has officially added internet gaming disorder to the International Classification of Diseases. Basically, this is what doctors and researchers use to categorize conditions in research. However, experts and psychologists don't agree. They feel this addition is premature and symptoms are too vague to be diagnosable. What's worse, they're reporting that this trend is being over-sensationalized and scientific facts are being construed or completely left out. I will demonstrate by how cherry-picking the details, the media and corporations are trying to show how gaming is affecting and destroying people's lives, but what some may actually have is an undiagnosed addiction disorder. Let me tell you what I mean about cherry-picking the details. Remember that newspaper headline? The full version of the headline was, "It's digital heroin, how screens are turning kids into psychotic junkies." If you're a parent, how does reading that make you feel? Do you picture your sweet little child turning into a drooling, strung-out hobo riding the rails because they looked at computer screens? This article tells the simple story of how a mother gave her son an iPad and he started playing Minecraft. She claims that gaming turned her happy kid into a mindless zombie who lost all interest in his older, normal habits. It even goes as far as painting tech in a negative light, saying we now know that iPads, smartphones, and Xboxes are a form of digital drugs. It goes on to justify this claim by using a snippet of study that imaged the brain of participants while playing video games. They wrote, recent brain imaging research shows that video games affects the brain frontal cortex in exactly the same way that cocaine does. That's right, your kid's brain on Minecraft looks like a brain on cocaine. What this and similar articles leave out, however, is the fact that everything that is pleasurable activates dopamine. The only way to avoid this is to avoid everything pleasurable altogether. Gaming researchers have published that video gaming raises dopamine levels to the same degree that eating a slice of pizza does, which is roughly normal to double resting rate, whereas drugs like cocaine raise it 10 times that much. These type of scare tactics have been around as long as humans have, and the average person will take the first opinion piece they read and strongly believe it's true, no matter how much is disproven. Other times, groups can lobby and pay newspapers, politicians, and other figures of influence to create fear and new laws to further their agenda. I'm sure everyone can recall the autism and vaccine debate. The research suggested a link between the MMR vaccine and autism in children. This research has been thoroughly disproven and the doctor had his license revoked. However, the damage has been done. Anti-vaxxers still believe this to be true and do not vaccinate their kids. As a result, childhood diseases are resurfacing and children are dying. Back in the early 1900s, the roads were a public place shared by all. Once motorized cars started killing pedestrians, public outcry called for cars to be banned. When the auto industry and pro-car lobbyists worked to change public opinion, before long the blame shifted from cars to jaywalkers using the public road, which led to jaywalking being a law even today. Shocking headlines and otherwise negative press sells. I urge everyone to look into the real research behind any message and not settle for the first shocking thing you read. Science in particular is an ever-evolving thing. What is true today may be disproven tomorrow, and it might not be the whole story. Let's look at the 9 characteristics of internet gaming disorder. They are preoccupation, withdrawal symptoms, tolerance increase, unable to reduce time spent, giving up on other activities, continued gaming despite problems, deception, using it as an escape mood, and risk. The proposal is that if you have any 5 of these characteristics, you have IGD. But think about this. In this list, 5 of these can apply to anybody that has an interest in any hobby. 9 of these can be linked to your job. Have you ever been preoccupied with your work outside of work or looked for a more challenging job? Bailed out on a social engagement because you're on a deadline? I know I have. Does this mean I have a work disorder or any type of brain disease? Of course not. So what's really going on? Dopamine and serotonin are the 2 main neurotransmitters that are linked to addictive disorders. Dopamine, which regulates our ability to obtain a sense of pleasure, becomes low when we experience prolonged stress and is linked to depression. When one chemical is too high, the others start to lower. Low serotonin is linked to sleep disorders, poor mood, lack of appetite, and aggression. I found myself in this state once before. Back in 2004, a lot of things started going wrong in my life all at once. I've been a gamer all my life, but during that time, it's all I ever wanted to do. It was a long time before I realized my addiction to gaming was my coping mechanism for my own depression. It was people in this game that nurtured me to seek help and ultimately saved my life. Carefully chosen scare tactics and finding new ways to label addiction is trying to belittle the gaming industry and continue to negative public opinion of gamers. People can become addicted to literally anything: alcohol, saving cats, collecting cookie jars, whatever makes them happy. It's recognizing that someone needs help if you notice that it's starting to negatively impact their life. One takeaway I want you to have is that video games and electronics are not going to turn you into a mindless slave to your habit. However, if you notice that these desires for your hobbies are more than others, it may be a signal. It's very hard for a person to recognize this behavior on their own, but approaching them and understanding can produce more results than just taking their hobby away or telling them they have a problem. My second takeaway is don't jump to the first attention-grabbing headline you see and believe it. Question everything, even if it sounds undeniably true. Especially be leery of anything that you read that is trying to sell you something at the end. Many times it's based on personal opinion, partial facts, or opinions they're being paid to have. My third takeaway is probably the most important one. If you see someone in your life struggling with any type of addiction, help them. You may not agree with what they've done or continue to relapse into, but if you truly love them, you may be the one that helps them find balance in their brain and save their life. Life is a very complex thing, and our brains are even more so. Finding new ways to label an issue doesn't lead to a solution. It's just another place to lay blame. At the end of the day, we all choose how we deal with life. Sometimes we need a helping hand to realize our choices need guidance.